Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Fremgen. Masters of the Universe Revelations. The show that broke 80s fandom. What did they do? What did they do? Well, in my humble opinion, they told the wrong story. The overall premise was fine, but how they carried out the tale kind of shows that they were focusing on the wrong thing. Again, in my humble opinion. Now, this is not because the show focused on Teela. I grew up watching Wonder Woman, Charlie's Angels, and The Bionic Woman, so a female heroic lead doesn't bother me in the least. But what they did with Teela? That's where I feel they got it wrong. Mostly I have two main issues. One, Teela getting freaked out by learning Adam was He-Man. I feel she totally overreacts. Hell, in respects to the character, I'd have her be like, yeah, I know. I've been fighting along both of them for years now, and I'm not a moron. But then on top of that, she learns the sorceress is her mother, and she's like, no big deal. Seriously? That is so frickin' wrong, it's disturbing. Imagine you have no mother through elementary school, high school, college, and then you find out she's been living next door to you your whole life. You've even run errands for her and worked for her, and she never frickin' told you. That is seriously messed up, right? Moving on to number 2, the second thing they messed up was King Randor. They even laid it out in the show, as the last thing he says to Adam before he dies was basically, I was never proud of you.
That's parental pride, Adam. Something I hope I can feel one day, as your father.
Then he finds out that he was He-Man all this time, and his wife never told him. Holy f***. That man is going to have a serious meltdown. Clearly, the writers of this show don't understand child-parent psychology, or even human psychology. They broke Teela and King Randor, and somehow the story is about empowering Teela and how there's no magic left in Eternia. Yeah, smooth move, X-Lax. So now, if you'll indulge me, I will tell you how I feel the story should have gone. First, the opening scene is the same. Skeletor is battling He-Man over the control of the Sword of Power. Fearing there is no way to stop Skeletor from gaining the power, He-Man focuses his power to destroy the sword, killing him and Skeletor. In bullet time outplay of the event, it's revealed to everyone in the room that Adam was He-Man. When it's ended, Teela is stunned. She slips to her knees and cries over her fallen partner. Later at Castle Eternia, the royal family gets the news of He-Man and Adam's passing. The queen sinks into her throne and sobs, while King Randor is utterly aghast. He remembers all the times he told Adam he wasn't proud of him. He lashes out at Man-at-Arms and banishes him for keeping the secret. Orko tries to smooth things over, but the king banishes him and Cringer as well. Teela, grief-stricken as well, tells the king that while secrets were kept, what does it say about them, unable to see the truth that was right in front of them? She then leads her father, Orko, and Cringer out of the palace room, and the king sinks, utterly shocked, onto his throne. Teela and company, with nowhere else to go, return to Castle Grayskull. As they commiserate with the sorceress says maybe they were wrong to keep their secrets. Teela says it's all right. She half expected Adam to be He-Man anyway. How could she not? They were both her best friends. As she pauses, the sorceress says, that's not the only secret. And then she reveals to Teela that she is her mother. Before she became the sorceress, she was a normal human who married Man-at-Arms, her father, and bore Teela. But when her mother, the current sorceress, died, she had to take her place. No longer being a human woman, she thought it was best to hide her identity from Teela. Teela's mind explodes. She thinks back to every time in her life where she wished she had a mother. How many times had she seen others enjoying the comfort of their mothers, while she was alone? Her confusion quickly turns to rage. She then condemns her father and the sorceress for all their secrets and lies. They have successfully destroyed the lives of everyone they know, and she is done with them. She storms out of the room, with Orko and Cringer following. Man-at-Arms turns to the sorceress and tells her that Tila was right, and they were wrong. The sorceress tries to defend herself by saying she's not human anymore. She couldn't have cared for Tila like a real mother. To which Man-at-Arms points out, "Then why are you crying?" The sorceress is stunned to touch her face and feel tears coming from her eyes. Days go by, and soon King Randor comes to Castle Grayskull. With a small attachment, he enters the Great Hall and is greeted cordially by the sorceress. As she welcomes him, he quietly says, "You stole my son." Not quite hearing him, she stops and says, "What?" Then picking up on what he said, she says everyone mourns the loss of Prince Adam. But he cuts her off and yells as loud as he can, "You stole my son!" She falls silent. Then he tells her that for years his kingdom and people have sacrificed for her and this Castle Grayskull. And for what? So she could stab him in the back? She meekly tries to explain the importance of the power of Castle Grayskull, but he shouts her down again. He and his kingdom are done with her. She can expect no more support from him. She tries to plead with him, saying evil-lyn is trying, but he refuses to listen and leaves. Finally, Snake Mountain. In what was once Skeletor's throne room, all his minions mill around wondering what to do next. Merman then enters the room with a few of his guards and declares himself the new ruler of Snake Mountain and all of Skeletor's forces. Evil-lyn then reveals herself from the shadows and challenges him. In a brief fight, she blasts him against the wall. She then ascends the throne, saying, if there are no more challenges, and there aren't, it's time to get to work. She then sits on the throne. Back at Castle Eternia, King Randor and Queen Marlene are having an awkward dinner. Each is sitting at the end of a very long table. The Queen is gently trying to tell him that she thinks he has made a mistake by abandoning Castle Grayskull. He needs to see the big picture. He sharply replies back to her if she thought it was funny. All those times he chastised and belittled Adam for not being brave enough, when he was actually saving the kingdom from disaster time and time again. Was she enjoying that? She tries to answer that it wasn't like that. He slaps all his food off the table and yells, "My son is dead, and I never knew him. Because of you." She has no answer, and tears well up in her eyes. He gets up from the table and leaves the room. Months later, we see a small, very quiet farm. Inside, there's a picture of Adam on a simple dresser, and Cringer is sleeping on the bed. Tila comes into the farmhouse and teases Cringer for being so lazy. Soon, Man-at-Arms appears at the door with Orko. Tila is not happy to see them, though Cringer is. Man-at-Arms, at arm's length, tells her that they need her. Evil-lyn's forces are carving up Eternia and are headed for Castle Grayskull, and that his ragtag group of mercenaries is not enough to defeat her. She replies, King Randor's armies should suffice now that Skeletor is dead. Man-at-Arms tells her that King Randor has abandoned Castle Grayskull. She replies, "Don't worry, I'm sure Queen Marlene will talk some sense into him before long." "The king has banished the queen," he solemnly answers her. This clearly surprises her. Living the life of a virtual hermit for the past months has kept her ignorant of what has been going on. Man-at-Arms then pleads with her as a father. Castle Grayskull needs its champion, and that is you now. Tila scoffs. "What, is Ram Man not good enough for you?" Man-at-Arms lowers his head and says, "Ram Man is dead." Tila is in disbelief. Man-at-Arms tells her that Skeletor always had a fatal flaw in his hubris. Evil-lyn, while not as powerful, has no such flaw. Without King Randor's troops or Castle Grayskull's champion, the castle will surely fall to her. While deeply troubled, Tila is still looking for a way out. "I'm out of shape," she says. "I couldn't possibly lead an army." Without warning, Man-at-Arms fires a bolt at her, which she easily slaps away. Then with a sigh, she finally relents and joins him. Cringer doesn't know whether to be happy or sad, and neither does she. So with Tila leading the way, the heroes' forces are winning battle after battle. Here we can introduce Andra into the mix if we like. Unfortunately, evil-lyn is such a savvy leader, the bad guys are still winning the war. Later, at Castle Grayskull, while Tila is leading the troops, Man-at-Arms and the sorceress with Orko try to decide on an action. When the sorceress asks about Tila, Man-at-Arms says that she's not ready to see her. Either way, the loss of the Sword of Power is the main problem. Without it, the sorceress can't make Tila the champion of Grayskull. And it would take far too long to remake a new one to stop evil-lyn. But the sorceress did learn a way to bend time and fix the blade from the broken pieces they have. They will have to go into the abyss, under Castle Grayskull, and collect some of the essence of the starseed, minor crystals that have sprouted up around the starseed itself. With one of those crystals, the sorceress can have the Sword of Power reassemble itself. This plan is brought to Tila, who agrees to go on the quest with Orko, Cringer, and Andra. Man-at-Arms decides to stay behind and defend Castle Grayskull. So this adventure would replace the trip to the Land of the Undead, but they can still fight Scareglow and Orko can still die if you want. Anyway, upon successfully completing the mission, evil-lyn's forces are at the gates of Castle Grayskull. Tila, with crystal in hand, has to finally see her mother, the sorceress. Tila is very cold to the sorceress, who says she understands Tila's pain. "Whatever, let's get on with it," replies Tila curtly. As the sorceress is casting the spell, evil-lyn and some goons break into the room. Evil-lyn sees what the sorceress is doing and is completely shocked. She screams for the sorceress to stop, as crazy energy flies around the throne room. "You don't know what you're doing," cries evil-lyn, as pieces of the broken blade swirl around and eventually fuse together with a mighty thunderclap. The Sword of Power is whole again. "What have you done?" bemoans evil-lyn. For just as the heroes are about to celebrate the return of the sword, Prince Adam reforms in front of them. Tila can barely stand at the shock of this. As the sorceress tries to figure out what happened, evil-lyn again says, "What have you done?" as Skeletor reforms as well. With everyone in shock, Skeletor acts and grabs the Sword of Power. Adam tries to take it from him, but Skeletor slices him open with the sword. Tila rushes to Adam's aid, but again with everyone still in shock, Skeletor claims he now knows how to use the sword, and he lifts it up saying, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power, and Uber Skeletor is here." The sorceress attempts a spell, but Skeletor throws the sword at her, impaling her on it. Man-at-Arms screams and attacks Skeletor, who simply blasts him with a spell across the room. Trying to regain the advantage, Tila yells for Cringer to get the sword. At first he hesitates, but being the closest to the sorceress, he leaps for the sword, yet Skeletor blasts him across the room as well. Skeletor then reclaims the sword, and after gloating for a while, he says all the heroes can leave and go home. Say goodbye to your loved ones, for he will murder them all soon enough. Evil-lyn protests. She can't believe that he's letting him go. Skeletor sits on the throne and asks her to shut up. He just wants to enjoy this moment of finally winning. Man-at-Arms wants to stay and fight, but Tila says they have to retreat. It's the only way to save Adam, and they are in no shape to save Mom. For now. Evil-lyn's, now Skeletor's goons again, let them leave. What's left of Man-at-Arms and Tila's army fades away, and the remaining small band heads for Castle Eternia. It's the only place they have left to go. Upon reaching the city, the guards stop them and are unsure what to do. Man-at-Arms asks to see the king. To his surprise, the king is there. King Randor confronts Man-at-Arms, asking him what he is doing there since he and all the others are banished. Before Man-at-Arms can answer, the king says that he is glad to see them. He continues that he hasn't forgotten how he was lied to, But in the past year, he's come to realize that he needed to draw his friends closer to him and not drive them away. Man-at-Arms and the others are relieved to hear this. The king then notices the body on a stretcher. Before they can tell them who it is, he walks over and discovers Adam's bloody body. The king is driven to tears and falls to his knees. He asks Adam's forgiveness for not seeing him for who he is. He then thanks Man-at-Arms for bringing his boy back to him. As they quickly take Prince Adam's body to the palace for medical treatment, King Randor asks Man-at-Arms to tell him everything. In the next few weeks, Skeletor has lived up to his title as the Lord of Destruction. Whole cities have been razed, and chaos reigns everywhere, though King Randor's armies have yet to join in the fight. At Castle Grayskull, we see that the sorceress is still alive, bloodied and wounded and sitting on the floor. Skeletor keeps her as a jester, threatening to kill her if she doesn't keep him amused with insults. Beastman tells an unhappy evil-lyn that she should be happy. It's just like the good old days. No, it's not, she replies, and those days weren't happy either. Evil-lyn notices that while still powered up, Skeletor doesn't have the Sword of Power. Skeletor replies that he's no dummy. The only other person who knows how to work the sword is Adam, and until he's dead, the sword must remain hidden. With that, evil-lyn goes about searching the castle. It's not long before she finds it, hidden by an illusion to make it look like a piece of the architecture. She thinks of grabbing it, then thinks again. Surely Skeletor has placed an alarm on it. Back at the palace, King Randor with Man-at-Arms is trying to get the army ready for war. Adam is healed up and is spending time with Teela. They talk about how much they mean to each other, the lies, and how they have dealt with his death. She worries for the future, but as always, Adam is optimistic and cheers her up. Later, King Randor is getting ready to go on a trip. When Adam asks him where he is going, he says to see his mother, the Queen. So far, she has rebuffed all his messages of forgiveness and asking her to come back. So he says he must go to her, tell her of their son's return, and beg her forgiveness. Adam smiles and says, how could she ever refuse his father? The king smiles and remarks that he's realizing now that he's missed his son more than he originally thought he did. That night, Man-at-Arms, Teela, Adam, and the others talk about how they can defeat Skeletor, when Uber Skeletor teleports into the room by himself. He says the time has come for him to kill them all, so he hopes they enjoyed their last few days. The heroes try to defend themselves, but he slaps them around the room and through walls. Eventually, Andra attacks Skeletor, but he grabs her by the throat, looking at her confused. Wait, who are you? Do I know you? Am I supposed to kill you too? She then blows a bomb off in his face to escape, to which Skeletor says, okay, you're on the list too. Eventually, Adam confronts Skeletor, but Skeletor tells him, no, Adam, or should I say He-Man Light, you don't get to die until you see me murder all your friends and family first. He tosses Adam aside and then pins Teela to the floor under his foot. He then prepares to kill her with a sword. Note, not the Sword of Power. Adam is in a panic. He reaches his hand to the sky and cries, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power! To everyone's surprise, the magic bolt comes down and infuses Adam once again with the power of Grayskull, though looking like the proto-barbarian He-Man, not the proper He-Man. And he is not quite himself. He throws himself at Skeletor, and the two have a terrific battle, basically leveling the palace. Eventually, Skeletor decides it's time to be the master of the strategic retreat again. Once he leaves, He-Man has no focus for his anger and rage, so he starts pounding on everything, swatting palace guards around like flies. Then, in a Betty Ross/Hulk moment, Teela manages to calm him down and get him to relinquish the power. An exhausted Adam collapses into her arms. She asks him what was that, to which he replies, he knows how to tap into the unlimited power of Grayskull. The sword just helps one focus and control it. Meanwhile, back at Castle Grayskull, Skeletor is having a fit. How could this have happened? Even in victory, He-Man continues to be a problem. Evil-lyn overhears this and is intrigued. She asks him what happened, but he replies, "Away from you, witch! I have to plug a leak." And he goes into the deep chambers of the castle. Later, King Randor returns to the city with Queen Marlena. The royal family is finally reunited. Seeing this, Man-at-Arms mentions to Tila, "It's good to see a family back together again, isn't it?" While understanding his meaning, Tila still walks away from him. Later still, in the war room, while the royal army is finally ready to march, King Randor, Queen Marlene, Adam, Tila, Man-at-Arms, and the others still can't decide on a way to defeat Skeletor. Just then, Evil-lyn appears in the room. "You just couldn't let me have it, could you?" she says. "You just couldn't let me win. Would I have been such a bad god? I'm sure I would have been a tyrant. But no, you had to bring him back. We were finally free of him, but your foolish vanity brought back the Lord of Destruction. And now nothing in the universe is safe." Tila barks at her. "What do you want?" "The same as you, surprisingly enough. To defeat Skeletor." Tila says Evil-lyn can't be trusted. But Adam recalls an adventure when Evil-lyn showed the capacity for good and even saved lives. He trusts her. Evil-lyn then says she has a plan to defeat Skeletor. After some prep time, the heroes finally attack Castle Grayskull. Thanks to Evil-lyn, Skeletor's defenses were misplaced, allowing the heroes to get closer to the castle than they should have. With Queen Marlene leading the army, King Randor, Tila, Man-at-Arms, Andra, and Adam, with others, enter the throne room of Castle Grayskull through a secret passage. Skeletor sits on the throne surrounded by his main minions, Beastman, Merman, Trapjaw, Triclops, and Evil-lyn. The sorceress is, of course, as always, sitting helplessly on the floor next to the throne. Skeletor welcomes them, as he's been waiting for them. A huge character-on-character battle erupts in the throne room, matching the battle of armies outside. As Evil-lyn and Tila fight, they secretly run off together and get the Sword of Power. In the chaos, Skeletor doesn't notice it's been taken. Tila worries that Evil-lyn, with her hands on the sword, will use the power for herself. But Evil-lyn laments that she doesn't know how to use it. Like any spell, it's more than just saying the words. Back in the throne room, Skeletor has gotten the better of Adam. But as he prepares to kill him, King Randor jumps in between, and Skeletor kills him. Adam rushes to his dying father. The king tells his son he couldn't bear to lose him again. Tell Marlene, who was out leading the army, that he loves her, and that he's sorry that he wasn't a better father to Adam. Grief-stricken with rage, Adam confronts Skeletor. Skeletor is taken aback, saying, "What? I told you I wasn't going to kill you until I murdered all your friends and family in front of you." Adam lifts his hand and calls upon the power of Grayskull, but it doesn't come. Skeletor replies that he plugged that little hole, one of the advantages of being the master of Grayskull. Now you can only draw upon the power with the sword. Tila appears on the balcony above everyone with the Sword of Power. "Then it's a good thing we have it." She throws the sword to Adam. "No!" cries Skeletor, who fires a magical bolt at the sword. But before the spell can knock the sword away, Evil-lyn on the other side of the balcony casts a portal spell in front of the sword. Avoiding Skeletor's spell, it drops out of another portal and into Adam's hands. One classic moment later, and He-Man is finally, properly returned. He and Skeletor immediately go at it with earth-quaking blows. They blast through the ceiling and onto the battlefield around the castle, as soldiers on both sides run for their lives. Skeletor, though, seems to have the advantage, as they blow mountainsides to pieces. Back in the throne room, the villains have been defeated. The heroes mourn King Randor, and Tila goes to her mother. But the sorceress is busy trying to grow her power. She tells Tila that being a master of sorcery, Skeletor might yet defeat He-Man, so she is going to use the rest of her power to help him defeat him. Though it's clear this move will kill the sorceress. "No," Tila says, "your time is over. It's time to pass your mantle over to your daughter." The sorceress protests, But then even Man-at-Arms says it's time for the sorceress to start listening to her daughter. So she relents, and Tila becomes the new sorceress. Now a normal woman, Tila's mother reunites with Man-at-Arms, and their daughter, Tila, glows with power. Tila blasts off an astral bird-like projection of herself, which flies into the sky over the battlefield, over to where He-Man and Skeletor fight. At the peak of a mountain, they wrestle for control of the Sword of Power. Gaining the advantage, Skeletor says, "Give it up, He-Man. You can't win. You are always just a pretender wielding the power, where I am truly the master of the universe." Just then, Tila's astral form comes streaking down out of the sky and blasts Skeletor from behind. Losing his grip on the sword, He-Man swings it back and chops off Skeletor's head. A resulting thunderclap blows the clouds from the sky, and in awe, the soldiers stop fighting and the battle ends. In a montage of after events, Evil-lyn sneaks away and Skeletor's other minions are all captured. A funeral is held for the king, with a focus on Queen Marlene's grief. Tila and her mother spend time together. Adam is crowned the new king of Eternia, and eventually we are left on a high battlement of Castle Grayskull. King Adam and Sorceress Tila are alone together. She says she's come to understand why her mother never told her, though she still doesn't agree. She swears that she will be a different sorceress. Adam is happy for her. They remark on how their lives have changed. Once they were just comrades in arms, and now they are the king and sorceress of Eternia. Tila hopes their relationship doesn't change as much as their roles and responsibility have. Adam takes her hand and says, "Nothing is ever going to change about how we feel about each other, Tila." She smiles. The end. Okay, that was really long fan fiction right there. But I just couldn't stop until the end once I got started. And you can see how I thought they just got everybody wrong. Especially Evil-lyn on the villain side, portraying her as some sort of abused girlfriend who just wants to burn down all existence. I think Lyn is tougher than that. And while I get the appeal of a He-Man Skeletor team-up, it takes the focus off one of the main points of the Masters of the Universe. Skeletor is the threat. So much so, we even have some sympathy for his minions, because he's just as much as a threat to them as he is to the heroes. But what you gonna do? Make a YouTube video or something? Wait. Anyway, thanks so much for spending time with me. Let me know what you thought of my rewrite. Did it all make sense? And if you got a better idea, I'd love to hear it. So subscribe, comment, like, and we'll all get our action figures out, play in the backyard, and what the hell am I talking about?